Ladies and gentlemen, the participants of the Helsinki Security Forum and people watching online, we are changing the format back to the panel format, and we are changing the perspective, raising our gaze a little bit, perhaps further into the horizon, and starting to gauge and talk about future of geopolitics, future of technology that I think is rushing towards us very, very rapidly indeed. And I'm particularly happy to be chairing this panel. I've been keenly interested in the artificial intelligence, the trajectory of the technology, the pace of its development, and obviously the ramifications on global politics, geopolitics, and international security. The title of this panel is The Age of AI Agents, the Implications for Safety and Security. And I think this is a timely topic, as we are indeed talking about potentially one of the most consequential technologies in our age. I felt really, really vindicated in pushing for this topic on this agenda when I heard Mikko from Nokia yesterday telling us that we are in the midst of an AI super cycle, and that sort of, I think, hammers the point home in a very good manner. We were talking about and also defining in a due course what AI agents probably could be. We can think of them as autonomous systems capable of reasoning, decision making, and task execution. This is something we have never ever encountered before in human history, that we will have more or less potentially autonomous actors alongside human beings. Our focus will be obviously concrete, talking about safety, preventing unintended consequences, and also security, which is protecting against misuse or attacks. But I also want to talk about, and we will be talking about, the future outlook and the geopolitical ramifications of this tech. I think we have an amazing panel here today. I'm really, really pleased with that you have accepted our invitation to be on this stage together with me today. So on my right, we have Mikko Hyppönen, a hacker, a TED talker, a person who has worked in cybersecurity since 1991 and has developed AI systems to detect online attacks. And today he serves as the Chief Research Officer at Sensofusion, a Finnish drone defense company known for providing tools used by the Ukrainian government to counter Russian drone attacks. So a warm welcome.
Thank you.
To you, Mikko. To his right, we have Predd, a senior engineer and director of the RAND Geopolitics of Artificial General Intelligence Initiative from the United States, which is a multidisciplinary research effort to develop and evaluate national strategies to prepare for and live in worlds transformed by the most advanced forms of artificial intelligence. A warm welcome, Joel, to you as well. To my left, we have Markus Holmgren, a colleague from FIIA, a researcher at the Finnish Institute of International Affairs and also Aalto University. And his research focuses on the global cloud and the geo-economic agency of hypercompute providers, the US-China rivalry over artificial intelligence and quantum technologies, and the geo-economic use of digital assets. And to his left, there is Katariina Wisakanto, a senior researcher at the Center for AI Risk Management and Alignment, where she develops methodologies for comprehensive risk assessment of advanced AI systems and their global scale implications. So I think we have a very, very high level of expertise and different perspectives at play here today. So the first to approach the topic and to talk a little bit about the current state of play in artificial intelligence in general and also what these AI agents entail. I would just want to say a few words from my own end. I think trying to follow the AI debates feels like walking in a hall of mirrors. A lot of the perspectives that we are witnessing and also talking about depends on the experts' essential future-oriented expectations concerning AI's future trajectory. And they can be bullish, very optimistic about the future of tech. They can be bearish, very pessimistic. And we also have the doomerish strand of debates, which is saying that we are really faced with potential catastrophic risks of misalignment and potential even human extinction. I don't want to go and push our discussions in that direction, but I think it's easy to see today that we are seeing the real-world manifestations already. The job markets are already being affected. The astronomical investments into compute continue unabated. New records are being broken almost on a daily basis. For example, only this week we were told that DeepMind and OpenAI achieved gold at the Coding Olympics, which I think was a historic first. We have even in Albania now a minister administered by artificial intelligence who ostensibly will make better decisions than humans when it comes to many of the issues. And people are starting to take notice as well. We have hunger strikes on the doorsteps of major AI laboratories, and the list could go on and on and on. So Anna, to start with you, I would like to ask you, where do we stand in your view in terms of AI development currently? And how do you see the current trajectory and where we are headed?
I fully concur with your mention of the mirrors. There is quite a lot of disparity and disagreement based on different actors' priors on capability development. There's a couple of things that sort of immediately stick out. So one is that we're still dealing with quite a lot of limited information. So we of course have the problem of under elicitation. So what we know of the models that we're developing currently is sort of very little compared to the volume of interactions when they are deployed in the real world, as well as really the state of incident reporting is not very comforting currently. We're not really tracking the types of leading indicators that would be appropriate for understanding not only sort of the technical capabilities of the AI systems, but also their real-world impacts in their socio-technical embedding. So it's still early days on what we need to be on the track to do. But I think if we can sort of bring a little bit more scientific understanding and really decision maker interest into these topics, then we have some good problems to solve.
And I think this is partly what we are trying to do here today, is also to raise awareness and raise the level of the debate. Joel, if I may turn to you, you hail from a sort of a laboratory that develops and evaluates national strategies to prepare for a living world transformed by the most advanced forms of artificial intelligence. This seems to imply quite a lot of future-oriented expectations concerning where the technology is heading. But where are we right now, and what we can sort of sensibly expect in the foreseeable future?
You're very much right. The team of economists and strategists and historians and philosophers that involved in this effort at RAND are very much focused on where we're going as opposed to where we are. But from the perspective of the future, there's at least two or three things that I could say. One is that you've already emphasized is the profound uncertainty we face about where we are. Will the performance of these frontier models continue to improve? Will the scaling paradigm hold up? Will there be a first mover advantage? What will it mean for great power competition? These are very much open questions that are yet to be resolved. The second point is that the pace of technology progress seems to fundamentally outstrip the capacity for governments to do anticipatory policymaking.
That's right.
And so we may be in a world where our response to dealing with or living in these futures comes from a response to events rather than some kind of top-down analytic or policy-making process. And the third point related to time is just to take note of a very fraught but I think relevant metaphor to the nuclear era, which was the last time a similar technology was as transformative for world affairs, in which we had 20 years between the time that analysts at RAND began to contemplate intercontinental ballistic missiles and the time in which we developed the frameworks and intellectual foundations for second strike survivability that underwrote deterrence, permissive action links that prevented misuse, arms control that limited proliferation. We are unlikely to have that kind of time, whether you're embracing the opportunities, the substantial opportunities for AI, for human flourishing, or the risks to our agency or survival.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Anna, I would like actually to turn back to you again for a little while. I notice increasingly when I use X, and I use it very passively, but people increasingly challenge the grok to define things as if I was a 5-year-old. That seems to be the recurring theme. So I would like kindly ask you to define to our benefit AI agents as if we were all 5-year-olds. And what does this phenomena, what does this technology entail, and what does it mean?
Certainly. So key to understanding AI agents is to keep in mind their autonomy, so capability to operate independently, persistent over time, so the ability to keep to task, the action-orientedness, so AI agents not only responding to inputs, but also taking action. The system integration, so the capability to use tools and operate in various real environments, as well as then the goal directedness, which allows them to pursue various types of objects.
So let me ask you, Anna, would you consider the kind of self-driving cars we have on the roads of Helsinki today, would you consider those to be examples or maybe narrow examples of AI agents?
Depends a bit where we draw the line, right? We had a really good conversation after dinner yesterday as well on sort of the difference between autonomous and sort of agentic. And so it depends where you sort of, what is the operating environment of the car, for example. So within limitation, if we're using types of automation on the highway, for example, then we can certainly say that the car has certain level of agency within that operating envelope. But sort of beyond that, we of course talk more about human decision making and calls on sort of where to activate any actions.
Yeah. So there is still quite a bit of room for, I would say, also human agency in terms of us agreeing with the basic definitions and what we are really talking about when we talk about these things.
Yes.
Yeah, and maybe to try to make it more concrete, obviously all of us have used generative AI, large language models, spoken with ChatGPT and brainstormed and what would be a good flight for me to go to Jakarta, and it's going to find you information. The difference with when it goes from just chatting with the system to going to an AI agent would be that it would actually go and find the flights and book the flights and pay the flights for you, as opposed to just finding information for you.
That's right. And this is exactly actually the direction where we're headed. The next section of our discussion moves on to talk about what I have called the glass half full, which is probably something like this. So the opportunities that we have when we are moving towards this, the age of AI agents. By the way, you should try to ask an artificial intelligence to draw a picture of a glass half full. You will be surprised what it will look like. At least I have been unable to get a sort of a reasonable outcome, but maybe it's just me not being very good at using these things. But turning to Markus here, 2025 was supposed to be the year of the AI agents. So has this borne out? And how does this situation look now in this field? And if you could discuss the potential benefits of AI agents, what are the sort of the good things we can expect? And then we will go through all the panelists so that you get to have your positive take concerning the issue as well.
Yeah, thank you. I guess year 2025 was not quite the year of artificial the AI agents. I don't think that future historians will designate this as the key pivot moment. And actually, you yourself in the opening speech and everyone else here talked about the promises, the potential benefits. It's kind of in our definition what is the promises. The more speedier, efficient, reliable decision making. I'm actually going to do the usual IR scholar thing and taking a step back quite a bit, and let's try to remove the roof of the hall of mirrors and look from above. The first thing that we see is that this is not a new thing. Already at the dawn of artificial intelligence, 1956, the dream was to create kind of artificial agents, the robot humans that would perform this kind of assistant tasks for humans, and they were quite hopeful that before, at least in the early 1980s, we would have these systems based on copying human brains. Well, it turned out to be a little bit harder than that. it caused this kind of an AI winter, not much developed until a new peak activity in late 1980s. Apple started its Newton PDA, Personal Digital Assistant program, really much aimed to do this kind of an assistant office managerial helping tasks. Did not pan out, they didn't have the technology, the project was scrapped 1993. Then came Microsoft with its Clippy, you maybe remember, came from the late 1996, also designed as to be this kind of an assistant helping humans to do these things.
But how about today?
And today we have another now burst of activity based on machine learning. Now, of course, the promise is even more advanced. We are again very hopeful that we will get there, and perhaps we will. Another big picture here is the bigger promise. So it's not just the individual tasks of what the agents can help us do to make our work more efficient, or make a key decision maker, government agents, military operators work more efficient, faster and reliable. But it is the changing of the complicated word techno-economic paradigm. And I again go back to the 1950s. We were living in an age of mass production when the new technology vastly improved our production capabilities and created an immense amount of jobs in that field. Then came the age of internet, when the digital technologies, this like a small data management systems were all the rage. The biggest, wealthiest companies were all those who were producing this kind of internet operating systems. And now we are moving with AI agents and related technology, we are moving towards the big data age. That's at least what I predict, and quite many others too. Let's call this like an automation of know-how labor. Not automation of production anymore, not automation of information transfer, but the automation of understanding and creation and know-how requiring tasks. Right. And those will get faster and enabled, and this will change the world again, slowly, gradually, as those previous changes did over decades. And that is the next like a goal in the horizon, the promise in the horizon. Right. And my last point is that these promises, while the systems are not quite yet there, these promises already shape our international relations. The promises are so strong that states are acting as a response to these promises.
Yeah, that's right. The shadow of the future is already above us. What about you, Mikko? How do you see the sort of the opportunities and promise of this tech right now?
It's a very wide range of different things that the decision making and execution of tasks, as we give this right to generative AI, will open for us. Like practical things that all of us will be doing is that we will be giving a generative AI agent access to our computer, to our desktop, the right to move the mouse and click on things and open applications and access our files, and we will give our credit card to these agents so they can do the kind of things we would do. They are just more efficient in doing it. You receive an email from someone asking you for a specific data, an AI agent will pick it up, go and look at the right files, look at the Excel spreadsheets, get the numbers and reply on your behalf, or go and book the flight and pay for the flight with your money. Scary, but these are the kind of things we will be doing. Then another example would be a more concrete part of the operation of a company. So instead of having access to a computer, you would actually integrate this kind of functionality into the core functions of the company, into the APIs. It would run on the servers, have visibility to the whole company, make decision making, give advice to the management. And this wouldn't need to be limited to virtual world and data. It could actually also control physical things, like actual factories, open up valves, run things that actually move in the real world, sort of like what we hinted on when we discussed self-driving cars. So when you give the execution and decision-making power to a generative AI, you open up a ton of new opportunities.
Right. Thank you. And this is indeed a profound shift that we're talking about. Joel, do you feel like jumping in as well?
I do. Seated next to a cybersecurity expert, I proceed with some trepidation in this, but one of the potential opportunities, even in the security environment that we see, is the opportunities for cybersecurity and cyber resiliency. Right now, we're in a world where cybersecurity advantage is the offense, but the potential for AI and AI agents to change the economics of cyber defense and cyber resiliency are such that states and firms that embrace the power of AI from the defensive side could enjoy advantages, but that doesn't come for free. It requires us to step up and actually integrate these systems into our cyber infrastructure. But I do see that as an opportunity in the security environment.
Yeah, thank you. And I actually love how these panels are sort of self-directing autonomous agents, because you introduced our next topic, and that's just perfect. Thank you so very much. But before we go there, Anna, would you like to still say a few words about this glass half full aspect when it comes to the AI agents, the opportunities and positive expectations?
Yes, certainly. So one of the interesting things about about AI generally is that quite a lot of the terminology is ill-defined, and there's quite a lot of hype. So the sort of language use, even on what journalists write about, is often not as precise as we would prefer it to be. But in terms of for this year to be the year of AI agents, we're still very much in a situation where a lot of the solutions that we see on offer are very much still sort of LLM wrappers. These are what we would before call middleware solutions. So we're talking about language models that can use tools. So there's still quite a lot of limitation in terms of what's the type of agency we're seeing roll out. We're not really seeing that much agents yet which are competently solving long-term tasks. It can be a little bit misleading on how this will all play out and how the year of agents will be realized. As mentioned earlier, the cybersecurity topics. I definitely see that cybersecurity is the first to roll out. There's quite a bit there to figure out still on how the offense-defense dynamics and balance will play out. To what extent we can sort of retain some first mover advantage on the defense side as opposed to the offense. And I think towards the end of the year and next year as well, we will start to have a little bit more conversations about sort of loss of control types of topics, control protocols for agents once the first incidents start being reported.
Right.
Hiski, let me add a comforting thought here, because all of this is moving very fast. It's kind of complicated. It's hard to keep up. This always happens when we have a big shift in technology or a major technological revolution. Right now, companies are thinking about their AI strategy or AI agent strategy, and it's a little bit unclear what's going to happen. Well, 30 years ago, 1995, all companies were thinking about internet strategy. There's this World Wide Web, and how are we going to use it, and how are we going to benefit from it? I don't think any of the companies present in the room today have an internet strategy. Of course you don't. You just have a strategy. It has become ingrained into your everyday operations in all possible ways. That's what's going to happen with AI. In 20 or 30 years, none of the companies here will have an AI strategy or AI agent strategy.
Yeah, that's probably fair enough. Moving on to the next segment of our conversation, which I have labeled glass half empty, and you can try to generate an image of that as well if you like. Talking about the safety and security challenges and their mitigation, which is equally important, even if more so. And I would actually like to turn back to Mikko here again, and maybe you could talk us through sort of the safety aspects, but also the security threats and what we can do about them.
Sure. Safety and security sound very similar term, especially in Finnish, where we typically just translate them to turvallisuus. But they're actually quite different here. From the point of view of AI agents, when you give tasks and the power to execute these tasks to these generative AI things, safety would mean more that they make mistakes, honest mistakes. They buy the wrong flight. They will lose money on your behalf because they have access to your money and you've given them right to spend it, and they make mistakes. Honest mistakes because of the way they've been developed and programmed. Security, on the other hand, would mean that someone on purpose wants to harm you through these systems. Not necessarily the system itself. Of course, you could have scenarios where the system itself goes rogue and wants to harm you, but more realistically that an outsider wants to hack you through these systems. This is computer code. They interact with other systems. It's unlikely that the provider wants to hack you. If you run an agent developed by OpenAI sees everything on your desktop, everything in your file system, it's highly unlikely they would steal those. Just like we're not really worried about Microsoft stealing your secrets, regardless of the fact that you're running their operating system, which means they could steal everything if they wanted to. More realistic threat here would be that since these systems interact with third parties, typically through APIs, programmable interfaces, that someone could use these connections to somehow hack the system itself and use the agency the agent has to reach your systems and gain access to whatever you're doing. So we have to worry about both the honest mistakes, but also about the new potential vulnerabilities that these systems open because they have so much agency and so much access.
And I think key part also here is that we are going to face some kind of errors, some kind of mistakes that are completely unforeseeable from human cognition perspective. And preparing against those is going to be difficult. And if such an totally unforeseeable error happens, it also can happen at a vast scale because of these agents can operate multiple systems at the same time. And for humans, that's very, very rare. So you can have this kind of a illogical catastrophic cascading failure very, very rarely. This is not the fearmonger here. These systems will...
when it happens, it can be a spectacular thing.
Yeah, exactly. More reliable than humans in most cases, but when the errors happen, they can be in a different kind of magnitude.
Yeah. Joel, if I may turn to you, I sense that you are somewhat optimistic about how this some of these things can be handled going forward. Can I push you gently and ask how would you assess the offense-defense balance when it comes to this particular question and obviously also the question of cybersecurity?
I think that I think I'm in the middle. I think that the AI it represents an enormous opportunity for us as well as a substantial risk, and that's as a national security strategist, we have to figure out how to weave both. In terms of the security side, we think that there's 5 problems that we should be worrying about, particularly about where the technology is going as opposed to where it is today. The first problem is that AI could empower non-experts to create new WMDs. In the near term, that's most likely a bioweapon. The second possibility is that advanced forms of AI could empower state actors to create some kind of wonder weapon that very rapidly and discontinuously affects the military balance. In the near term, that's likely to be in the cyberspace or in the information domain. The third problem we see is that there's something more gradual, not on a decade's time scale, but still quite rapidly on the intergenerational time scale, that states that embrace AI in their economies and their scientific enterprises and their militaries see some kind of substantial boost in strength, and economies and scientific enterprises and militaries that don't languish. The fourth problem we've talked a little bit about is the idea that AI gains agency and enough autonomy that it can act out on the world stage. It's kind of like an actor on its own. Whether it's the most extreme form, like an existential risk that some speak about, or just a bad actor wreaking havoc in your critical infrastructure, both of those would be very concerning from a national security perspective, obviously. And the fifth one really is less about the technology than states' perceptions of the technology. What actions would states take in recognition of these other problems, acting out to either protect their own progress or prevent others' progress, up to and including preventive wars as the technology gets more and more capable?
Right. Thank you. If I may turn to you, Anna, for a question concerning this thing. What we are beginning to see here, of course, is that we have this technology that will have certain amount of agency. Then there behind this technology, there will be human volition, human agency, malign or benign. But what kind of... And then Joel talked about that states will have agency and they can start to have all kinds of effects in the world. But what kind of regulation should we require in order to keep tabs with the the landscape that seems to be emerging? And can we achieve it?
Absolutely. So we have a lot of we have existing high reliability domains in which we've done quite well on regulation. We've done a bit of the balancing act between standards, for example, for risk management, as well as more technical standards to provide guidance on the more technical parts. Standardization in AI is moving very, very fast, very slowly, let's say, compared to how the technology is developing. We're of course seeing good efforts with the EU AI Act and the codes of practice, and great work also early stages by the UK government. They are doing quite exciting work on systemic risks, for example, and thinking about societal impacts, which is sort of not at the top of the discussion agenda of all parties currently. But what we definitely need to do is type on epistemic bootstrapping and bring in multiple stakeholders into drive these issues. Just because the technology is moving fast doesn't mean that we shouldn't be proactive about creating quite specific technical standards even. Quite a lot of the solutions, if we're talking about securing model weights or these types of topics, actually quite a lot of the core problems have a lot of a lot in common with the traditional cybersecurity solutions. But we've been in the setting where quite a lot of the teams that are developing frontier AI models at the AI corporations are quite young teams, so they don't necessarily yet have all the best practices from the existing domains that we have. So we should definitely ensure that as decision makers and as societies that we make demands on the use of the best practices that exist and sort of not reinventing the wheel. But also sort of zooming out a little bit, I think something which is missing often from the conversation is that these models or these systems are grown. We say trained, but really sort of what is missing is really the aspect of the data that you put in, the types of algorithms you use, the solutions you make in terms of training or inference type compute, the type of reinforcement learning modules that you rely on to train these systems and agents for real world environments will make a big difference on how they will behave also in the real world.
Sure. Thank you.
Let me,
I was about to turn to you, but
Thank you.
Go ahead. If you...
Well, I just want to again try to make it a little bit more concrete on what AI agents mean in the world of cybersecurity. There's tons of different angles, of course, how AI or generative AI affects cybersecurity, but for the discussion at hand, I think exploit discovery is the most concrete example. So vulnerabilities that we have in our systems are there because the programmers of those systems are human, and humans make mistakes. When programmers make mistakes, we end up with bugs, and when you have bugs in connected systems, they easily become remotely exploitable vulnerabilities. And to discover these vulnerabilities, this used to be something only humans could do. They would read the source code or reverse engineer the program, try to find the bugs, and then write code which would exploit the bug, which would give you an entry to a remote system. Very powerful thing if you can do it. 2 years ago, not a single, what we call 0 day, an unknown security vulnerability had been discovered by an AI. Today, I don't even have the latest number, but it's over 100. Over the last 2 years, more than 100 completely unknown security vulnerabilities from everyday system, the kind of systems you run, operating systems and browsers and PDF readers, have been found completely hands-free by AI systems, which we could call AI agents, because they don't just look at the code, they write new code to try to exploit it. And if you, for example, look at the top 100 list of HackerOne. HackerOne is a bug bounty system where people try to break into systems and they get rewarded by the companies that write these systems because they want to find about vulnerabilities they have. The number one in some of these charts right now is Expo, which is a security company which does this completely with AI. It's not a human. It's an AI. Which sounds bad, but this is actually good, because these are security researchers. Expo it's not a hacker. These are not criminals. These are companies or company which tries to find vulnerabilities so we can fix the vulnerabilities. So it's a prime example of AI agents improving our security. But of course, the thing that is left unsaid is that if they can do it, bad actors can do it as well.
Yep, exactly. And Mikko, this was something that I wanted to ask from you. Anna said that these systems are grown, which is an interesting expression. And what you just said, and I would like to ask you, where does this leave human agency going forward in a world where these grown systems interact at speeds that are very difficult for us even to understand?
When we look at the big technological revolutions, from the integrated chip to connectivity to mobile phones and social media, this revolution, generative AI, it is the first technological revolution which has the potential to improve itself. Everything I just said about discovering security vulnerabilities with AI agents, you could use the very same technologies to have these large language models or other models improve themselves. Large language models speak and understand, can read and write languages, all human languages and all programming languages, including the programming language they've been programmed in themselves. So the thought experiment goes that you take the source code of GPT or Grok and show it to itself. Hi, this is you. You are this. This is how we created you. This is your code. Read your own code. Understand how you work. Then improve yourself.
Yeah.
And then repeat that 1 billion times.
Yeah.
And the end result of that would be unknown and ununderstandable to us humans. And that's a potential for great good or great evil. And we don't really know which way that could go. But this is the first time something like this is even remotely possible.
Yeah, that's right. Markus, you wanted to jump in, but rather briefly, because we still have one more topic that we need to cover and give also the audience the opportunity to ask
You can
questions.
move to the next topic then. You can move to the next topic.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you. Thank you. So the final segment that we want to talk about here today, and I have labeled it, whose class are we even talking about? Maybe I'm pushing the envelope a little bit too far here, but the future outlook, including geopolitical competition and the kind of the future that awaits us, perhaps more in the direction that Joel and his team is working. And here what we are seeing right now, here today, of course, is the United States as the technological leader with the best models, with the best technology, but also a massive lead in terms of compute, sort of the brute force of compute, and that seems set to continue. There seems to be news coming from America almost on a daily basis with massive new investments in the field. But China, obviously, a very close second. And I was wondering, Joel, if I could ask you to say a few words. How will this competition play out? And more importantly, is AI a zero-sum race to the bottom? And with what implications for safety and security? What kind of a future awaits us?
It's a great question. Oftentimes the AI competition is framed as a race, and often the question is whether it's a sprint to the technology frontier or more of a marathon for adoption and diffusion. I have come to believe that it's a better metaphor is it's a pentathlon. And I would credit my colleagues Jim Mitri and Colin Cowell for a paper they recently wrote on this topic. There's really 5 races that we're talking about. The first is the one that tends to get most of the attention, which is the race to innovate. And this is the race to AGI. It's raced mostly by the firms in the US and in China, but others are providing key inputs, including compute, like you mentioned. The second race is the race to national security adoption. And this is just how our militaries and our intelligence communities race to integrate this to either for aggression or deterrence, but there's a race there to integrate this into our national security apparatuses. The third race is the race to economic integration, in which our economies around the world will use AI to become more productive, either just through productivity forces, also through unleashing the powers of AI to innovate scientifically, creating new innovations into our economy. The fourth race is the race to lead the global AI ecosystem, not just in the major powers in a great competition, but throughout the world, in the global south, among other places. How do we set the standards so that the models, the compute, all of the infrastructure that goes into AI and the future of AI is according to the standards we'd like them to be. And the fifth race is the one we don't want to race, which, as you mentioned, is the race to the bottom. Either it being misused to create a weapon of mass destruction in a destabilizing way or some kind of loss of control event.
Right.
So unfortunately, we're racing all of these at once, and we don't have a choice.
Yeah. Yeah, that is my impression as well. Well, Markus, now, turning to you, how do you assess the geopolitical ramifications of this?
I really liked talking about 5 races, but for me, maybe the key is the implementation race, the race to develop and implement these systems. And it ties us closely to these dynamics that Mikko talked about, of how these can implement themselves, develop themselves, and what Anna talked about, it mattering much how do we design this and we can influence it. Because of this is different compared to this older technological paradigms I talked about, in that many of these key systems, the systems that will be most beneficial for the implementers, for the nations, have to be developed purposefully for individual systems. If you want to develop an agent running an like army missile defense system or government email server or whatever, it has to be that particular system, not any other. Unlike previous times with mass production and internet, a viable business strategy was to wait out, let the others, your competitors, test out and develop, and then go in and buy the ready product and gain advantage that way. That is likely not an option here, because you have to be there on developing this. And so we have an implementation race which encourages both companies and governments and states, militaries, to test and implement much faster than they would otherwise do if this wasn't the case. So it increases the risks of mistakes, of escalations, of lack security considerations, of under regulation, because there is a very urgent competition on being the first ones to implement and thus be the first ones to develop the functioning products that we don't yet have.
Yeah, but what you're saying seems to imply that it's too simplistic to say that this is just a race between the United States and China, but also the those who are in a position to implement and apply these basic breakthroughs created by this tech also have a stake in this race.
Absolutely, I think it's clear that these international corporations have an agency in the fact that the governments, both China and US, are trying to leash these companies. There's sanctions targeting their own companies, and in US and China is launching all sorts of actions of trying to rein in the control of these companies. And that shows us that there at least was, and certainly it looks like there still is agency behind them.
Yeah. How about you, Anna? How do you assess this great game that we are engaged right now?
Something that seems to be a recurring theme is that there's quite a lot of conversations which are missing each other. So I hear this rhetoric a lot in Europe as well, of how European industrialization can be combined with the promise of advanced AI, and this is the niche in which Europe can shine. I definitely agree that there is a lot of opportunity there. So, for example, currently GPT-5 is now so good that it can actually be used to validate outputs from other models. This means for anybody with a scientific vein, means that for any type of scientific experiments, you really can go back and go back and look at your assumptions about what is the cost of your experiments and where do you need resources and manpower. So there's quite a lot of opportunity there to really accelerate R&D in a lot of domains, and there's a lot of opportunity there for Europe as well. But there also needs to be this courage to take that opportunity, because at the same time we know that US and China is racing ahead with developing sandboxes where agents can learn and fail at various types of tasks, with everything from computer navigation to experiment design to new ways of developing operating models in companies, and really looking at a future where we're looking at the 10x engineer, the 100x engineer, the 1000x engineer, and the unicorn, which is led by one person. So there's quite a lot of opportunity here, but I think often the conversation is missing quite a lot of the really the dynamics there on what's the sense of urgency we should be having on these topics.
Yeah, Mikko, if I may, where does this leave Europe? I mean, Mikko Hautala, a another Mikko, yesterday said that Europe is massively lagging behind in the digital realm. So where do we stand, and where should or do we need to stand in order to fare well?
Well, there is a big difference between where US and where China is and where Europe is. But it's not like Europe wouldn't have AI research labs and AI companies at all. We do. Important ones, major ones. Companies like Mistral or Aleph Alpha or H Company or Rolling Square or Stable Diffusion, ranging from large language models to image generation. And then we also have to remember the data center discussion. Surprisingly large amount of the frontier AI models are being trained in data centers in the Nordics, including right here in Finland. And as Finns know, there's a huge push to getting tons more of this capability right here. If I read right, Nebius operating here in Finland is going to have 60,000 GPU, NVIDIA GPUs, H100s and H200s right here in Finland, which is going to be the biggest center of this kind of calculation capability in all of Europe. And if you drive around San Francisco, you'll see them advertising everywhere. Train your AI workloads in Nebius Cloud. So Europe is a player, but of course the biggest players like OpenAI and Google and Microsoft and DeepSeek and ByteDance are bigger.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah, Joel, if I may turn to you and ask you a question concerning the future. Can we hold this world together as some kind of a single entity? I already mentioned Mikko Hautala twice, so I will do it a third time, just to be on the safe side. It's always a good idea. He mentioned that they are now negotiating or trying to arrive at the place where they can have a joint standard for 6G communications. But is this feasible across the board when it comes to the future of technology and artificial intelligence? In particular, are we headed to a technological bipolarity instead, where the world is divided between different technological ecosystems? And if so, where does that leave us, the Europeans?
Well, it's a great question, and unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball, so I couldn't tell you. I will say one of the most important parts about this technology, in the moment it's arriving in, is that it's arriving in, to state the obvious, given the other panels that we've been listening to today and yesterday, it's arriving at a moment in the world in transition. And so if you can imagine, just as a thought experiment, what it would have been like if these transformative AI capabilities were emerging in the 1990s, it would be a completely different governance framework for us to think about managing its arrival. But it's not, and the world is sorting through many other problems at the same time. So whether we converge on a bipolarity or some kind of negotiated AI governance regime is another source of deep uncertainty.
Yeah, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we are arriving to the point where it's time to end the clumsy sort of glass-related metaphors and open the floor for questions and comments from the audience. I'm sure there will be plenty. I would like to ask you to be fairly brief. Introduce yourself, a comment and a question, and also to whom you would like to designate your question, if not all the panelists. I think I saw a hand here in the front, and then we circle in that direction, and we take about 3 or 4 and come back to the panel, and then we'll see how it goes. Yes.
Thank you, Hiski, and thank you, the panel. My name is Mats Löfström, member of the Parliament and chairman for the Intelligence Oversight Committee here in the Finnish Parliament. My question is, how do we ensure securing democratic and human oversight when potentially deploying artificial intelligence systems and agents in security, intel, defense, or war? Rules and guardrails can be perceived a bit boring to discuss in the world with great power competition, and with countries breaking or bending rules, and where the aim for several are that our side has to win. But oversight gives accountability and guardrails that are crucial for rules of law societies. So for human systems, we have oversight, but my question is, how do we ensure oversight in systems with less or with no humans at all in the loop?
Thank you. And I saw plenty of hands in that direction. Charlie, you will have to wait. You've had so many opportunities already. There at the back. Yeah, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Frank Sauer with the University of the Bundeswehr in Munich. Thanks to the panel for this excellent conversation. I'd like to prompt, pun intended, prompt each and every participant real quick to give their view on the embodiment of AI in the shape of humanoid robots. Will this be something that we'll be very concerned with at the Helsinki Security Forum in 2030? Even have them, do a specific task in our militaries, or will it still be science fiction at this point? Thank you.
Thank you. And there. Yes, that's right.
Thank you to the panel. So my name is Heidi Nystedt and I'm the Director of Governmental Affairs at Microsoft. So one of my questions is that about diffusion or adoption of AI, because already today we know from the war in Ukraine that there is a huge benefit for the Ukrainian armed forces, strategic benefit in using AI technology that has given them an edge. And also at Microsoft, when we talk about cybersecurity, we use a lot of AI to defend our ecosystems. We have around 6 million attacks every single day, so AI has been a really good in this. But we do know that Europe is lagging behind, not only in development, but also in adoption. And when it comes to adoption, that is really critical. So how do you see that going forward, and how can we make sure that we are actually capable to defend ourselves in this environment? Thank you.
Thank you. And we have one more in the table there, right in the front. Thank you so much.
Hi, Olga Oliker from the International Crisis Group. So we haven't talked about some of the other implications for AI. I appreciated the question on regulation. I would like to go a little deeper and ask about the fact that a lot of the LLMs, at least, are trained on illegally obtained material, right? How do you prevent that from happening? And then we also know that artificial intelligence is a huge energy hog. There are tremendous climate implications of massive growth of AI. Are you just counting on AI itself to fix that eventually, and climate in general, and we can stop worrying about it? I know there are ways to use AI that are more conscious of its climate effects, but I don't know that very many people are doing that. It didn't come up at all in this conversation. So I just want to throw these things out there because they're not.
Right. Thank you so much. So we have 4 questions. First of all, how to ensure democratic and human oversight. Then a question about the drones and their fusion with artificial intelligence, how, I take it, scared should we be by 2030. Then the adoption of AI in the military and strategic benefit, and how Europe is lagging behind, and how we can ensure that we can stay in this race. And finally, the question of intellectual copyright, and of course the climate and other environmental effects when it comes to the development of tech. Maybe we go in this order, starting from Joel and ending with Anna, and then we'll see how we do in terms of time.
Sure. I'll answer 2 of the ones that I think that I have something thoughtful to say, but I want to acknowledge all of them are important questions. The first on the robotics one, I'm just so happy that question was asked. I think that there's the conversation on frontier AI and robotics tend to happen in different rooms, but these are converging trends. And so it's easy to imagine that the day a very capable model, maybe a general model emerges, we'll have robots roaming around our economies and societies, and then we'll have generally intelligent embodiments. That's a prospect we should be planning for. So the conversation on AI security and safety should be integrated with a conversation on robotic security and safety. I will say in a geopolitical context, this is particularly important issue because whatever lead the United States or control democracies have over compute supply chains in AI, China has a much stronger position in the robotics ecosystem, and it represents a substantial vulnerability. So very important problem. I'm glad you raised it. On the adoption question, I just want to emphasize it's very important to just connect the technologists with the operators so we can experiment with this. I think we're particularly concerned about the prospect of surprise. Again, I think nuclear analogies are fraught, but at one point in the 1940s, physicists saw that we could split an atom and we could see the causal pathway between the split atom and a nuclear weapon. Right now, we need to be prepared when a new frontier model capability comes out, and then there's an analogy there. We can draw a causal pathway to something dangerous. And so we need to be putting these models in the hands of the operators that know how to use them so we can anticipate those kinds of threatening pathways as well as opportunities.
Right. Mikko.
So about oversight, I think we could do it, but not everybody will. That's the real problem. So what I mean by that is that certainly we can develop these more powerful systems in safe and secure ways, and we can have the guardrails, we can have the ethics, but there are countries and players and actors who couldn't care less. And of course, in my new day job nowadays, as I work for a drone defense company, we think about this a lot. We are clearly moving to the direction of completely autonomous and automatic killer robots, which sounds like science fiction, but when you already look at both flying but also marine and ground drones, which have no control channel at all, which will find the target, make the kill decision and kill with their own decision making, that's already a reality, and it's going to become a much bigger problem in the future. And these are not being built by Western countries. These are being built by the countries who don't really care about the oversight question at all. And I guess that also ties into the question about the embodiment and like human-like robots going around. That's going to happen, but I think it's going to probably take a little bit longer, and I think we will see more simpler solutions in the first place. And again, I'll point back to what I said about like ground drones. I'm not expecting to see Terminator-like war robots anytime. Maybe not during our lifetime, but we already have like ATV, like Mönkijä kind of drones going around, which are autonomous. So, yeah, it's starting.
All right, thank you. Markus.
Briefly, so much. On the oversight question, I'm more worried about than democratic oversight over the AI systems is the lack of democratic oversight over human agency and action. It's not like we are actually moving towards getting more democratic and having a stronger rule of law in the world. So I think the first thing would clean the backyard. Very briefly on the killer robots, I'm much more worried about the bigger picture, which is like mass destruction systems. They're using these agents to develop biological weapons and chemical weapons and widely spreading mass destruction viruses like AI-enabled NotPetya and this kind of stuff.
I hate the way you think.
That they are anyway. These kind of killer robots are killing individuals. I'm much more worried about the the possibility of genocide. And the two last questions are tied together in that we need to enable the growth by kind of acknowledging that we are behind because we haven't been updating our own system. Europe is locked in the mass production world. We support towns and growth centers that were developed for the mass production age and not for the internet age, much less for the AI age. And that means updating the education system, making it easier for people to move around, companies to build their offices and factories where they want them to build them, which is metropoles near universities and airports and with excellent airport connectivity. So this kind of like basic restructuring of society is needed. And this is why I talked about the big paradigms, because that is the big picture. We are going to miss this train if we just look at the agents as individual thing. Yeah.
That's fair enough. Anna, you will have the last word in this panel. Absolutely free speech, but I would gently nudge you. Perhaps if you could say a few words about this intellectual copyrights and climate and environmental effects, if you feel comfortable.
Absolutely. So that was kind of the plan to work backwards here. So thank you for the question on copyright and energy. There's quite a lot of nuances to this conversation that we didn't have the opportunity to bring up during this conversation, since this is just a short panel. But for both of these questions and sort of the related topics, we are really talking about trade-offs, and especially with the economical situation with a lot of the Western countries, we are really talking about the trade-offs in terms of infrastructure and investment, and where we want to be with environmental targets. There is an economical incitament to optimize the training and inference runs of AI models. So we do at least know that there is not only the sort of environmental factor, but also there is an economical incitament to find the ways of running the algorithms that require the least amount of energy. So that's positive. I always enjoy when I find an incitament vector that happens to be pointing to things I generally care about, because that just makes things a lot easier. On copyright, we'll see where that conversation goes. To some extent, we also know that as far as the leading frontier models are concerned, we know that we're looking at running out of training data 2027 or so. It's not necessarily an unsolvable problem, because we also know that we have great opportunities for creating synthetic data and so on and so forth, and creating the types of sandbox learning environments that we want to emulate for real world interactions. But to some extent, the internet has been scraped, copyrighted materials have been used, and we know that a lot of smaller models have been diffused and trained using the larger models that in turn have used copyrighted environment. So to some extent, the cat is out of the bag, but we definitely want to be looking at solutions where the creators of any original content are rewarded for having created that content. So sort of ending a little bit with a hopeful note on that. A brief comment on the oversight, because I think this is so incredibly important. I think there's a lot of simple solutions that we haven't really yet implemented yet. I mentioned incident reporting. We're really not doing everything that we should be there in terms of collecting the type of data. We should also acknowledge that as adoption increases through society, and as we sort of our populations use more and more of these systems, the news we will not see things in the news anymore, because they won't break the news barrier. So under the surface, there will be growing systemic risks, growing systemic impacts from the usage of these systems, which will have big impacts on our epistemic security, the types of cognitive environments and digital environments we need to have in place also to support our democracies, and so on and so forth. So even just starting, with the simplest things we can do in terms of tracking bot weather, tracking social media, sampling where we don't have the resources to sort of track and monitor everything, that's a whole conversation as well, to what extent we should, right? But there's certainly a lot of simple oversight things we could implement that have not been implemented yet.
Right. Thank you, Anna. Dear friends, my glass is empty. Our time is up. I want to thank the panelists for this wonderful conversation, and the audience as well. I thoroughly enjoyed the ride. Thank you so much.